I'll invite my fellow panelists. And to start with, I'll invite Vaneyck, who is a senior developer at Frontline SMS. Next, I'll invite Jane Njuguna, who is a QA manager and training and support manager at Twiga Foods Limited. Also in the panel is Evanson Biwott, who is the head of engineering and co-founder at Sendy. I'll also invite Trevor Kimenye, CEO of Ongair. And last but not least, Seth Kigen, a systems architect at Twiga Foods Limited. So the topic of our panel today is getting the best out of your developers. Based on the hiring panel we had yesterday and from experience, you will find that programmers are very highly paid in this industry. And even when you compare yourselves to your peers in the same level as you, in different fields, you'll often find that developers tend to be more highly paid. You'll also note that they are a hard resource to find. For those of you who've tried to hire developers, and especially when it comes to senior engineers, they are quite a hard resource to find locally. So with all this in mind, how do you keep your engineers constantly engaged so that you have value as a company based on how much you're paying them, and also keeping the developer interested in what you do and what products you build? So I'll let my panelists introduce themselves, their companies, and what they do as we start off this topic. I'll start with Seth.
So my name is Seth Kigen. Basically a software architect at Twiga Foods. My role is here and there. I usually call myself, basically I'm a software engineer, but I do many other things to support the business technically.
Okay. My name is Vaneyck Otoki. I'm a senior developer at Frontline SMS, 5th floor. In the same building. My role is, other than the day-to-day coding, but also I work with other devs, leading them, just showing them the ropes. I happen to be the oldest member of the team, or rather the dev team, so there's a lot of institutional knowledge I carry forward. Kiri is just talking at me right now. So that's really what I do. I dabble and do some of the system architect things. Yeah, but I would say mostly just offering a lot of the technical direction to the other guys.
My name is Jane Njuguna. I also do pretty much a lot of things, but mainly is QA management and training and support, and also double up as a person in charge of running programs and making sure different people linked up and they can be able to use the different applications that you have for them.
Hi everyone, my name is Evanson. I'm head of engineering at Sendy. I think I'm done with the least responsibilities. What I basically do is basically system architecture, sprint discussions, liaising, basically getting information from the PM, working with our tech engineering team to build a good platform. Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Trevor. I'm the Chief Errand Officer at Ongair. I just make sure things are happening, but I'm a software engineer by training.
Okay. Having been software developers for these many years, Vaneyck, you say you're the oldest developer at Frontline SMS. How do you keep your developers engaged? Are there any methodologies you're using?
So engaged, I can look at it like you want them motivated to do the work they're doing. I think other than so there is the aspect that you want to give them something challenging, but also there's the aspect that you want them to grow in something that they are interested in. So one thing that we will then probably do with CTO, the CTO, which is Shiro, she was in a panel yesterday, is that when we sit down with the devs to plan their goals, we'll be able to collaborate and say, I'm interested in this area. So then it's not that we're then telling them, you have to grow in CSS, you have to grow in JavaScript. It's like they'll say, actually, I am interested in user support. I want to grow and become better at offering user support. So we collaborate to set the goal so that they can own the goal. It's not just a goal you're pouring on them and saying you have to be an amazing backend dev. It's like perhaps you are not interested in growing that, then we will want you to then say, okay, I want my trajectory in my growth as a dev to involve this kind of thing. So there are devs who've said, I'm actually interested in Android dev. So if there is an Android-related task, that will have them be part of that in a more involved manner. So I would say, just a collaborative goal setting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Anyone else can pick it up from the panel?
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective and experience, and from a project management perspective, what I do as first is respect the team. You have different members with different skills and responsibilities, so respect that they earn the job to be there in the first place, and then respect that they have skills and give them the responsibility. Just like he said, when you're in the team, let them own the issues. They come up with the problems, and with that, they are more, they actively participate and they own the issue. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe just to add on that is, we also notice a couple of developers kind of have new ideas all the time, because you're working on basically a challenging environment where you need to be creative very fast, you need to move very fast. So a lot of the things we do just to maintain them, basically maintain them to be active, is to give them opportunity. So we have these periods where maybe in a day we say basically tomorrow, work on something you love yourself, right? Something not even related to your work at this company. So someone comes up with an awesome idea and wow, so we actually didn't know you could build that. And that basically generates a lot of interest, generates a lot of ownership, because someone feels, hey, I made this thing. It must be, this is something I own myself.
Okay.
So at Ongair, we're a very lean development team, very few as well, and we are all tend to be full stack. So you have back-end developers, front-end, and I think one of the things that I've seen with my team is, one day you'll get a task. You might be the back-end guy and you're given a task which you're like, okay, that's not really the kind of task that I want to do. But we found, especially for the younger developers, just to broaden the experience. We've got guys there's one of our developers who came in thinking he was a front-end dev. He's now, I think, one of the best iOS devs that I've seen in this country. And just by exposing them to different things and different challenges, I think we are lucky that we have enough of those technical problems to solve. So you just expose your developers to different challenges, and they themselves will pick the areas that they want to focus on.
Okay, just a question, and maybe you can pick on that. You have all mentioned that you want what the developer wants to do is what you focus on. What happens in a case where at the end of the day there's a project that has to be built in Android and your developer is interested in Python? How do you manage that?
I can say that there are core skills we should have. I think you take into consideration that when you're hiring, that we would like, for example, front end, say, we want you need to know Java and let's say JavaScript, because you need to do some web, some UI stuff and some most of the back-end stuff. So I can say you capture it at that point, that the core tasks you want to do is that. For example, some of the devs we've had, we use Grails as a platform. Hardly do we ever hire somebody who is a Grails expert. I wasn't a Grails expert when I joined, but I knew some of Java. So I think at that point, it's like that's where we capture it. It's like we say, okay, when you're hiring, we want you to at least know some Java, at least know that, so that we are not then showing, like bring up that later, oh, by the way, we need you to be a Rust expert or something. Like there are times like that, but that is rare. It's not the core thing. Yeah.
I'll agree with them equally in terms of, I'll go back to when you're hiring, you usually hire for specific roles. So if you're hiring for an Android guy, you're hiring an Android guy generally. And when it comes to things like backend, it's usually we hire a backend developer. We don't hire like Python developer or a very core specific. As long as it's an experienced person in backend and they have an understanding on at least a language that you support, we take in someone who at least is able to build for the stack that we are hiring for. So when it comes to actually giving them tasks, then if you're an Android developer, you're given an Android task. But if you are a front-end developer that you're interested on Android and there is a core Android task that has come in, you will prioritize that task to go to an Android guy instead of a front-end guy. But if it is just a task that needs to be maintained, it's a bug that has come up, and the Android guy is busy doing some other thing, and there's someone who can actually look into it and deal with it, then you're able to give them that to be able to experiment and learn. So it's a mix. Generally, it's about, I think it's really good to broaden the experience of your members, but at the same time, you need to understand the strengths of each member to be able to, when you have a task that really requires someone to deal with it, some level of expertise, you know the person to go to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure.
So I think, maybe I have a different perspective. So I mean, if an engineer comes to me and says to maybe this thing is built in Java, and the guy says, I want to build it in Django, or in Node.js. I mean, if you can prove to me that you can build it with whatever language you want to use, and you're making something awesome, I mean, I allow you to do it as long as you can prove that you're actually building something good, right? But at the same time, I think because different engineers do basically they do different things in different ways, and they have their own way of accomplishing things. So yes, probably allow you to do it if you prove to me that you can do it better than it is of now. But at the same time, you also need to consider that you don't want to like have a massive stack, right? So like you don't want to have one app in Java, another app in Django, 2 apps in Node, a couple of apps in some weird language no one knows about, some microwave language or something. So of course, there's an aspect of it that you want to make sure that you have not a very wide stack, because if a new engineer comes in and they want to modify it, they'll be like, never heard of this language before. So I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's a combination of not making sure that you don't have a very wide stack, at the same time allowing engineers to try different things. As long as they can prove they can build something better with the language that they want to bring on board.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the only thing I'll add is there's some jobs which nobody likes doing, and sadly they need to be done. You might have a team where people are kind of leaning towards being strong on back end, but then you have some front end tasks. I remember like one of the things we struggled with last year was just improving our test coverage. So that was something which I told everybody, guys, I want this thing to be 80%, and nobody's excited about doing that. So one of the things that I've found is just in terms of planning and assigning tasks to devs, it's kind of like a feedback sandwich. So you give some exciting work, but then there's also a bit of some of the cleanup work, so that somebody's not just bored doing some hard work or some boring work that needs to be done. You just mix it up also with interesting tasks, so that somebody's not just like, I'm going to work today, and it's just, like 8 to 10 hours of doing tests, but you can also do other small tasks.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who's hired developers to do a job? By a show of hands. Or is there anyone who's worked with a development team as a project manager? How many people have been told it works on my computer? Which is basically everyone who had raised their hands up. Exactly. How in your companies and in your experience working with developers, do you manage that? How do you make your developers' work visible?
That's this kind of question. Say that's a very good question. Work visible. Simple answer is you can ask, but I think it's learning how to ask the right kind of question, because you can also get a vague answer. One thing we have tried to do well, not that we've perfected, is doing quality stand-ups. So I think most companies will have a stand-up in the morning where you say, this is what I was doing yesterday, this is what I'm doing today. But I think you really want to take it further than that, where you're saying, okay, this is the challenge I faced yesterday. This is something I learned yesterday. But so in terms of just making sure that it's not just a status update, it's more of, for example, if we're all in a team, I can be able to tell what she's working on even without having touched it, because of the kind of quality of summary you're giving. But also so that you can track it and be able to not really track it, but be able to see the progress. We introduce like what we call a 2 p.m. stand-up, where you do the same thing at 2 p.m. So that, for example, if someone was blocked in the morning, then at 2, instead of just sticking on your computer and wrestling through it, like at 2 p.m., it's like, because it's like there's not a lot of pressure, everyone is sharing. So at that point, you can share and say, actually, I have this challenge. I was hoping to have finished this by this. I haven't. So at that point, also, team members can ask on another question. So we notice that we need to do that because it's very easy to go through a whole day. And the next day, you sort of hear the same update. Oh, I was fixing tests or something. And so it's like then you can catch it early. So that allows us to get visibility, because you are just trying to put the status updates in a manageable place so that you're not asking somebody after every hour, hey, where are you on that thing? It's 2 p.m., it's more relaxed, everyone is doing it, everyone is sharing. So
okay. So do you have 2 stand-ups in a day? Or
yeah, 2 stand-ups.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, so to basically answer the question is, I think this is where processes come into place. So for example, things like code reviews help very much. So someone basically before it goes to prod, someone gets to see that, and kind of the process that ensure that people are in the same direction, looking the same way. Another thing is, you have a simple rule that if something takes you more than 30 minutes, just scream and say, hey guys, I'm stuck. That way, because ideally, I might be stuck. Maybe I'm doing something on Java, right? This guy does some other language, maybe he's doing JavaScript, which is a different thing. But if I go to him and ask him, hey guys, I'm stuck here, what do I do? His perspective might help me basically move quite fast. So it will help me be able to tell him, hey, this thing, it's working on the machine, but when I upload it, I don't see anything. I don't see logs, I don't see anything. So I think it's always advisable to go to someone, tell someone, hey, I'm stuck, help me out. And I'm sure, regardless of whatever language those guys are using, they'll have some insightful, basically, advice or insight for you to be able to solve your problem.
Okay. In our case, it's a bit different, also similar. When I joined, we were not doing Agile, so we had different teams. There was a back-end team and there was a front-end team. And not really QA, the devs were doing the QA. And then after some time, we saw that the process wasn't working. And then we decided, let's adopt Agile. And then we have, with the different models of the company, so we have different applications, some for sourcing. There's another application where deals with sales. So we divided the teams such that there is a lead, there's an Android dev, and there's a front-end dev in each team. And then, so each team deals specifically with a specific module for the company. So there's a sales team and there's a sourcing team. And in that, so now we have two week sprint, and then we do planning, and team leads are responsible to make sure the teams, their respective teams are getting unstuck, so that they can be able to deliver at the end of the sprint. The other thing that we do to just make sure that there is no silos within the teams is support. So we get the engineers to support what they build. And it's not like, so long as if you're in the sourcing team, you cannot support what the application that's in the sales team. So it cuts across. And then you have a different team that is in the integrations. So if we have an issue that has come up, let's say in the sourcing application, that can be built up quickly so that you can reduce the amount of time that's spent in support. It's the integration team that does that, amongst other things. So we have something like sort of a cross-cutting roles and integrating within the teams to avoid the silos.
Yes, I think these days it's quite easy to handle transparency in terms of knowing where your team is and what's working and what's not working. With source control, continuous integration, as long as everybody in the team is using those things, it's easy to tell whether something's working or not. So it kind of helps to mitigate that problem of it's working on my computer or not. I remember one of the jobs I had when I was still employable as a software developer was we used to have a build machine that had a light. So every time the build broke, the light would it was like a siren. And you can't leave the office with that thing on. So everybody, if you know the one who broke the build, I mean, there were some anti-patterns. People would just roll back the commit that broke the build. But it was a system where everybody sort of knew that at the end of the day, if it doesn't run on the build machine, the task's not really done. I think one other thing that I find with teams is, we have this joke in the office sometimes, people say that bugs kind of fear two developers. So when one guy is there, he's stuck, and just someone else coming and looking at your code just helps you find something which might be really, really obvious, and you spent like 30, 45 minutes looking at it. So I always say, just yell out whenever you're stuck.
Anyway, just to add on to what Jane had highlighted before, she's mentioned about the 2 week sprints that we usually have. So to enable, we encourage the devs to, whenever they are stuck, to reach out to their lead or whoever has the best knowledge for whatever they are stuck in. So that's the primary thing. It's not, we do not put it in the process, but we just encourage, if you are stuck and you don't reach out to someone, it's up to you. So the other thing that we put in process is check-ins. So we do, primarily in my team, I do 3 weeks, three check-ins per sprint. So in the first week of the sprint, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday. So first Tuesday, to unblock anyone, to review whatever we plan, Thursday to check if we are going to hit our sprint at the end, and then Tuesday just to unblock anyone that has any issues towards the close of the sprint, and just to close a few issues on that. So those are the systems that we have generally to help the teams to be unblocked. And then the other thing I think Trevor has already highlighted is in terms of visibility, we encourage devs, push your code at the end of the day. End of day, push your code. If you should never, a day should never end without you pushing your code to the central repo. And with that, we have the code reviews also. So if you're submitting your work for that this is what I've done. It should go into now to join the rest of, generally, if somebody is doing a pull request, maybe to our dev branch, then that's when we do a review. We check through whatever they've done, and also we have some, we use a code analysis tool to be able to help us reduce the number of hours that we do code reviews. So if you push your code and it has any quality issues, so we have a tool that does checks on quality issues, immediately it breaks. So you don't review, we don't look at your work. If it has quality issues straight out of the way, you just have to fix those issues before it comes in. So in terms of visibility, I think we've already highlighted. So code reviews help us to see what somebody is working on. Mm-hmm. So if you're saying you're stuck, push your code. Let me look. Let me check it out. Let me see what's up. You know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. You've all spoken about tools in various ways. Trevor's mentioned versioning. You're talking about pushing code. Maybe just to help the younger junior developers, what specific tools or processes are you using in your companies that would you recommend for other developers in the room?
Primarily, of course, source version control. If you're not using that within your teams, I think it's something. We're in which year? We're in 2018. Yeah, we're in 2018. So if you're not using source version control, please. And primarily, you should look for one which is centralized source version control. I know Git can be distributed, but have a centralized repo that everyone's code goes in there. You can review whatever everyone is doing. You can have visibility about what's going on. And the other thing I think on top of that is automate your CI/CD pipelines. So that is about automate building your code or building artifacts from your code. So for example, if you're doing Android, generating an APK, you should automate that. If it is building a Java application, the output will be a Java file. You should always automate that. A dev should not build and generate output from their own machine. So you should make sure that automation in terms of building and also automation in terms of running the builds. So a central place where if you're running your tests, if you have your test in your code, everyone has visibility on tests I've run, how many were successful, how many failed. And also the other thing within that is deployment. The final thing in terms of automation is deployment. Mm-hmm. If you can be able to automate deployments in a way that a dev shouldn't be able to think about, now I'll have to SSH to some machine, run some scripts, bring up the system and all, every time they do a deployment. So you'd want them to just do code, finish coding, push their code to a central repo, and then they don't have to worry about the rest. All they have to wait for is, okay, there is feedback. Your tests have not passed. You have code quality issues. Your deployment somehow failed because of 1 and 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. So you would want to take off what we call the DevOps part of things away from the developers. They should have the knowledge on how to do it, but take away that extra things that they do that's not core to what they do. I think I'll let the rest of the items to the rest of the team to handle.
So yes, I agree with you. We are in 2018. So if you're not using Git, I don't know, you shouldn't be deving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course Git. I'm a big advocate for Git. I mean, there is tons of free stuff out there for you to use Git. Git, yes. Another thing is, you said, is basically automated deployments. Very important as well. The only thing I'll just add to an extra thing is containerize your stuff, like don't just push stuff to one server. You have like 10 applications running on the same server. Use Docker and then make it even better, add Kubernetes inside. So yes, containerize your stuff. It helps you a lot. The reason I'm saying that is when we started Sendy, we had one server. So it was a metal server, like it was an actual an actual server. It was a Xeon 256 GB RAM computer, right? So we had, it was one monolithic application. So it used to go down roughly every 3 hours, right? So we used to joke in the office that there is someone at the data center basically fanning that, server, because we would go down every other time. And basically after like putting up Docker and basically turning the whole thing into a microservice, we kind of just moved away from every 2-hour shutdowns to maybe weekly shutdowns, right? So, so Docker is very important. It basically helps you like segment resources for your applications, right? So you decide this application is too resource intensive, so you allocated tons of memory and RAM, memory and CPU. And maybe there's one guy who maybe runs once in a while, so you give him few resources. So it's really important. Like it's so good when we have that saying that goes, you can change the wheel of the car while the car is still moving, right? Like you just look down there, remove the wheel, put in another wheel. So Docker will help you do that, and you can be able to scale very fast.
I would like to add, I think all of us use some chatting software. So communication is key. We use Slack. Before, pre-Slack, we used to use Skype. Yes, Skype. So, but I think one thing we've tried to do is we've took a bot, it's called BotKit. So what we've done is that we've put some of our tools as available via bots. So for example, if you need to deploy to either of our test servers, you can issue that from the bot itself. If you need to find out what's the changelog, we've built scripts that do that. So that, for example, you've deployed a new thing, you need to find out the changelog, you'll say, we call our bot Katana. So Katana, changelog, it then tells you, okay, this is what has changed between this and this. Copy paste that here. So we've put a lot of tools that would otherwise have to be manual tasks as we can say functions on the bot. So deployment is one of those. Changelog is another. We have something called retro, where as you want to like make sure you have to know what went wrong during a sprint, you can record your retro point through the bot, so that at the end you can discuss. So it's those small tools that just make it easier to, yeah.
Maybe I can just add, in addition to the communication bit and the dev geeky stuff, we need to communicate to business and tell them what we are doing and in a manner that they can understand. So apart from selecting the processes, the methodologies, that we decide to use as a team, it's important when we have a way to put down in a structured manner what we are planning to do, what we have done and achieved, probably do a demo, and have their tools that can be able to help. So for us, we used Agile as the methodology, and we use Jira as the tool. Yeah.
Okay. You've mentioned, I'll throw, I want the audience to start asking questions, but before that, you've mentioned you have 2 daily stand-ups.
Yeah.
At 10 and at 2.
Yeah.
Seth said you do Tuesday, Thursday, Friday demos. I'm hearing a lot of what in a developer's mind could be micromanagement. Constantly reporting. Are there challenges you faced while implementing these processes? And what are they, and how do you draw the line between these are processes that are helping the business and not necessarily being Big Brother?
I'll just correct one thing. The check-ins are just so we do daily stand-ups. Daily stand-ups is everyone within our team just does daily stand-ups. It's not directly connected to the sprint per se tasks, but it's just having visibility of what you've planned for the day. But the check-ins are very, very specific to It's just about managing, because you'll find, this is what happened, classic. If you run any sprint, you'll find the first week, no one does anything, right? And then the last week, that's when you see, your burn down chart. It's always like this, and then it does this, or it does this, and then the last few days it just goes down like this, or straight down like this. So you want to manage that in a way that, as a dev, you'll always wait until, I've been a dev, I know this thing. So I'll always wait until Wednesday, Thursday. That's when adrenaline will kick in, and I'll start working on my tasks. As he said, inspiration will come in on Wednesday or Thursday. So you, as a team lead, you don't want that to happen, because if there's a blocker on Thursday, your sprint is messed up, tasks are messed up. So you would want, the check-in is just to ensure that people are aware that work needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But on the issue of micromanagement, I guess the thing is, give developers as much freedom as possible, reduce the number of meetings. So the check-ins are, for me, I've tried to negotiate my teams. Should we reduce the check-ins? They're like, no, we need these check-ins. Because I would want to make the check-ins to be like, to automate them. Like you do a bot, like a retro bot that just checks, like a poll that tells them, okay, how is this doing, how is this doing? But they were like, no, let's just meet. And if there's anything that you need to unblock, you meet physically and we unblock you. So the thing about that is reduce the number of meetings, give the developers the freedom to do and respect them. Okay. Respect their skill, respect their ability to do the stuff. And then if they have a problem, they'll always come to you. They're like, oh, I'm stuck here. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think if how often you do check-ins was the measure, then we'll be the biggest brother of all. Eh? I can understand why it can appear that having too often of check-ins can appear like a thing that hinders. But I think what we've learned over the years is that better to catch a problem early than to catch it late. Like you have that same burn down chart where it's like you seem to close everything last minute, but it's possible actually to sort of smoothen it out such that it's sort of healthy, you're not rushing towards the end. So I think we've tried to do, and I say try because we were always improving, is that the check-ins we do are sort of, you're building it into the culture of the company. That it's not that somebody is watching you, but this is an opportunity for you to get help. This is an opportunity, and subconsciously, even as you're giving an update, you'll be like, in the morning I read the Jira, and then at 2 p.m. you'll even feel weird saying, in the morning I read the Jira, because you actually realize, actually I've not done something. Mm-hmm. So I think you can take the approach and say, I want to give them a lot of space, but the fact that we are human, it means that there is a tendency to want to lazy a bit. But it's like now what you want to do is that how do I get a balance where I'm also giving some sense of easiness, but also I'm saying that it's good for us to do the best we can. Mm-hmm. So I think for some of the devs who've joined Frontline, it's like them coming in, they've found that that's what is there. So there's no other thing to think and say, oh, it was used to be different. So I think that's what I would encourage, like make it into a culture, make it into, I think even the tone of voice, how you explain something. It's like you'll ask that, hey, by the how, I saw you did something cool in this thing. You're not saying, oh, where's that thing? Where's that thing? Tell me. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, guys, hey, I saw that UI, it really looked nice. Then that creates an opportunity to have the discussion. Mm-hmm. So I would say, no matter how many check-ins you have, it's really what kind of culture are you building. You can, because that is the control you have. You can ask a question that is attacking, or you can ask a question that is encouraging. Mm-hmm. So it's, yeah.
Okay.
I think to add to what they say is it depends, one, with the group that you have, whether you have senior devs or junior devs, you treat them differently. And then if you have your devs understanding your vision and your goal, and they own the problem and they are part of contributing to the solutions, it's a bit easier when you won't have those many sort of check-ins that look like micromanagement. Sometimes they bring out the issues to you without you necessarily asking for them. And then it also depends with how you ask, as he said. It might not be that check-in at 2 p.m. or at 10 a.m. It might be just a friendly, like, say hi, and you try to find out how they are, if they're stuck, something like that. Mm-hmm. So it kind of reduces the feeling of micromanagement, but you still get what you want in terms of progress and if they're stuck.
Okay.
This one, anybody here know about the Umbwa method?
Yeah.
Seeing some old developers.
Management.
Yeah, that's management by walking around. So you just walk around the office and see how things are going. I think it's quite disrespectful for many reasons, but primarily because you're not trusting your team, and most likely it points to you not having processes for communication and feedback. I think one of the things that I really like to echo is whether something is micromanagement or you've been given a lot of leeway. It really comes down to the culture of your organization and your team. So for us, I think we have a lot of leeway. My devs are here, they know I don't walk around the office. Sometimes I do, I'm going to the printer. I'm not going to look at whether code is being worked on. But it's really also just about accountability. And one of the things I've strived for at Ongair is just to make sure that devs also know the consequences of either something being late or something being early. For us, it's a product that's been used. So if there's a bug, there's a customer service person who's taking shit the whole day because this bug hasn't been fixed. So there's a lot, just trying to build those bonds between the teams. So it's not just business versus tech. We're all in this together. We're all trying to solve a problem. Sometimes actually fixing something earlier in the sprint, if it's critical, can get it deployed earlier, and then that helps the business. Devs are I think we're very optimistic people, but when it actually comes to delivery, there's usually challenges. So I think one thing that I've found with my team is just to try and let everybody know that it's a shared mission. We're trying to do this because we want to achieve a certain goal.
I think I agree with you. Personally, I mean, all of my devs, or actually my colleagues, all of them hate meetings. So it's like, if we can sort out this thing without meeting, please let's do it, right? We have Slack, so just ask me and I'll no need for the meeting, right? So, for us, what we do is we don't have daily stand-ups. We just have one meeting start of the week. We have a meeting start of the week that goes into Trello. So if you're working on a particular project, if I need to know where it is, I won't come and ask you. I'll just go to Trello and see, person A has moved this thing from being done, it's now in staging, it's being tested, it has passed the tests, it's now, it's basically been handed to the PM. So I believe, and I personally also wouldn't like someone to come and check on me every few hours. I mean, I'd get pissed off. I'd be like, trust me to do my work. I mean, if you don't trust me, it means you basically hired the wrong person, right? Yeah, so I believe like, if you give your developer enough time and be like, okay, fine, this thing's gonna take us 2 weeks, so put everything on Trello. If something comes up, just communicate on Slack. Maybe we do the first check-in maybe by the end of the week, midway during the project, and if something comes up, we can discuss and proceed. But I believe like, if what you're saying as well, like it needs to be a culture. It needs to be that if you give me something to do, I need to do it within the time that I said I would do it. If I can't do it, I can quickly say I'm stuck, I need help. And then that means no one needs to come and check on you regularly just to see how far you've gone.
I want to hear your closing thoughts on how you can increase productivity amongst developers and rebuild their reputation. A lot of business owners will tell you that they don't trust developers. And I think Kiri mentioned in the morning when he was opening the session that we've had a couple of stories. For example, the designer he mentioned in the morning didn't deliver work because his cows were sick. But you're talking about having a 2-week design sprint. So I want to hear your closing thoughts on that, but I'll first take questions from the audience.
My name is Anthony. Okay, great. Okay, my name is Anthony. I'm working with Brick. What I wanted to find out, probably hear from most of you, is how you handle documentation while building.
Documentation while?
While you're building solutions,
We have done a horrible job. But it's by our own standards. We say, for example, I'll give an example. I'm just being real. We have struggled. It's not we are the best team in the world. We said that, for example, if you're working on a feature, make sure you document it as you go. But we've realized that that is actually a very big discipline to cultivate in devs. So most of the time what will happen is find that we will forget. It's like, I have not written docs. But I think what we've learned is that after every sprint we do a retrospective. So we'll be like, you didn't do, or the person who didn't write docs will say, we forgot to, you own as a team, we forgot to write docs. So, but the more we then actually own up to the mistakes we did, the more we don't forget. So I think I would say, how do you handle it is like when you, one of the things we did is that we said, okay, the goal, the bar is write docs as you go. If you fail to do it, there's a retrospective that will remind you that you failed to do it. So that's how we have tried to improve in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else who's doing it and not trying to improve it?
So developers don't like writing stuff, right? They just want to code. So it's a challenge, I definitely agree. Because someone's like, I could just make another feature rather than write the documentation. So one of the few things so first what we did is we basically put it as part of the process. So so it means before you hand over the project back to the PM, because the project comes from the PM, comes to the engineering department, we basically build the thing and then you hand it over back to the PM. The PM now picks it up there and decides how they're going to train the team, how they're going to figure out how that goes out of us. So so we started having devs write basically documentation as it goes along. But then you notice the way they write it, no one else can understand it, right? So like someone will write a documentation as an algorithm. So so it means even if that's handed over to the PM be like, what is this? This is not what I asked for, right? This is like something really different. So it means, so what we did is we basically did a small training on our devs, just how to do it, make it very short, make it very precise, and then have it as part of the process. So it means as a dev, basically not as a dev, but as a PM, because if you're working on a project, there's a PM and then there's like the devs you work with. So it means the dev, in this case, who's also the PM in that small project, will make sure that before they hand it over to the PM who initiated the project in the first place, there's basically a documentation. And that goes with basically in GitLab. So it's very easy to, I mean, if you tell a dev, give me a document in Office or in Word, be like, nah, I can't do that. So so goes into GitLab as a Markdown document, handed over to the PM to get to the project. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
So I'm Stacy, and some of the things, like I've been a team lead for an internal project for a while, and I could tell some of the things you said really happened. So I have a few questions. So one of them was like you mentioned you do stand-ups daily. So I wanted to know if you use a bot or it's a meeting, and if it's a meeting, how do you make sure your devs are not bored? Because I hate it to have so many. If I have more than 2 meetings in a day, I feel like my day is just horrible and frustrating. And also, the person who say they have one meeting like every week just to catch up with the team. So in that kind of situation, how do you foster team integrations among the devs? Because sometimes developers like working on themselves. They feel like I'm in my zone, so please don't bother me. And to the person who talked about code analysis tools, so can you please give us example of the tools you use to analyze the code quality?
Right. So I'll answer 2 questions. One is stand-ups. We automate that. So we do that on Slack. There's a bot called Tatsu. It's a very simple bot. It just somebody goes puts in a command start, and then it goes through every other person asking them what did you do yesterday, what are you going to do today, is there any blocker, like that. So it's automated, so we don't have to have a meeting. Yes. Second question about code analysis tools. There are a couple of them, but what we use currently is called Codacy. There's Code Climate, there's, which other one? I know those 2 very well, Code Climate and Codacy. But for us, we use Codacy. Works very well. So it does 2 things, code analysis, and it does code coverage. So with that, we're able to see what's happening. It rates even the project. So if your project is really has bad quality, maybe it's an F. If it's really good quality, it's an A. And yeah.
So yeah, I'm the guy with 1 meeting. You can imagine at Sendy we have a big engineering team. So we have 22 guys in the engineering team. So it doesn't make sense to have a meeting with all those guys on Monday, right? So what we do is we have a meeting with the team leads, right? Just on Monday, like what basically was going on last week, what you're planning on doing this week, what resources do you need, what basically is blocking you. So like, why can't you, what blocked something you built last week. So, and then on a normal week, like we have maybe like about maybe 6 or 7 projects that are ongoing currently. So the projects that are ongoing will have maybe about 4 devs working on it, right? So maybe, let's say they're working on a feature about verification of maybe documents, right? So maybe you need 1 person from a particular department, maybe 1 person from mobile, and the guy from web, and the guy from backend. So there'll be a PM for that particular project. So that PM is the guy who will run that project up to the end. So it means if I need to know where that project is, that PM will basically just update Trello. So basically, then I can see, or anyone else in the company can see, project A is at stage A, B, C, D. So that way, I don't need to basically go looking for every developer on where they are. If I notice something is amiss on this project, I can quickly check with 2 people. So I can check with the overall PM of the company, who is in charge of all dev things, and I can also check with the PM of that particular project. So it means I'll just need to go and see what's the flow of this project. Are you guys agreed on doing dev on these days? You're doing testing on these days? You're pushing out these days. So if it gets to that day and it's not in staging, that's when I can come in and say, guys, what's going on? Yeah. So that is why we don't have daily stand-ups, because different projects have different flows, different procedures, and it's much easier to just go somewhere and check where everything is at once. Answer your question?
I thought you had 1 team.
Yeah.
Having 1 stand-up the whole team.
No.
There are many questions, so yeah, maybe.
Maybe some. just have one question. From your experience, what are some of the best collaborating tools online?
Yeah, so I think it depends on that definition of collaboration. I think most of the people here use Slack and they would define that as a collaboration tool. I actually really hate Slack because people put in a lot of information in there that becomes very hard to retrieve. So like people DM each other passwords and stuff, and there's a lot of information that gets lost within Slack, but that's just a personal opinion. I use it just because it's convenient and it's easy, but I've found that it just sucks a lot of the information into the that you could otherwise document elsewhere. But for us, it also depends on what you want to achieve. So we use Trello as well, just to communicate the features between like the business owners and the tech team.
Yeah, I would say Trello, Slack, and GitLab. Super good tools.
One thing I'll probably add, we use Jira, but I think one thing I'll emphasize is it's the kind of notes you put on Jira. I think that's with any tool, if you just put, I finished the task as the comment, then it will never help anyone. I can attest to facts where scenarios where we've gone back to a Jira 2 years ago when you're dealing with SSL, and we saw, this was the challenge these devs found, because they were able to just outline the approach they took and the challenges they faced. So that's what I would say, like whatever, whether it's Trello or Jira or GitLab, make sure you write notes that you will be able to read later and say, this note's actually helpful. Don't just dump a whole website there, but it's something that you can say, this is the link, this is where I found the resource, this is the thing I needed to change. That's what I will say.
Okay. I know there are a couple of questions at the back, and maybe you could look for the panelists after this. But just to hear your closing thoughts on the whole issue of can we trust devs? Go ahead.
It's the people who can trust devs are usually people who've never been devs. Mostly, but not exactly that way, but the business, because sometimes we, as somebody has already highlighted, we are very optimistic guys. We say something is going to be done in next 1 hour, and then it takes another 4 hours to get it done. So that's the root of the problem of us not being trusted. But as a team lead, knowing the strengths of your team and just giving them the freedom and trusting them to. So if you as a lead is that person who is, as a lead, you should be like a cushion between your dev and your business guys. Okay, so if they don't trust your devs, you should be the one who should be able to provide that trust. So that if you are the one who is the cause of mistrust if there's a mistrust between your devs and yourself as a lead, your team will not function, definitely. Yeah.
I can add to what you said. After some time and you're used to know how your team works, then you will be able to tell things like how to estimate how you'll do your work, how long it's going to take, and basically falls into planning. So with proper planning and communicating that to the business, because that is what makes business not trust the devs. You say you'll be done in 1 hour and you're done in 4 hours. So as a leader, you should be able to know with time how long certain tasks or kinds of tasks take to be done and communicate the same to the business. And even when something happens, because things happen and it's not always the same that you start from point A and get to point B within 2 hours and it's done in 2 hours. Constant communication with the business as well about that plan, it also helps to trust the devs.
I remember when I was just starting in development, there's a project manager who told me, my job is to make sure that you can work, not to make sure that you work. And I've sort of taken that with me all through my career whenever I'm managing people. It's just to see, what ways can you help people to work better and to actually achieve their goals? Because developers, we're not nefarious people. We don't want to miss the targets. We want to finish the work and go home early as well. So as a manager or somebody who's managing developers, I think that would be a good advice for you to just think, what things can I do to help these developers achieve what they want? Sometimes it could be actually protecting them from the business. It could be this person's told you this is going to take 1 day, and then you manage and say it's going to take 3 days. As in, you just have to see what works best for your team.
Let me share. I can give you an insight into what we've tried to do at Frontline, is that we've taken an approach where don't try to be optimistic. Don't promise the world and then offer a small town. And also as a dev team, we need to be able to point that out amongst ourselves, so that even when you're going to present this to PM or whoever, already as a dev team, you've scrutinized your own plan and said, you said you'll do this in an hour, but I think you'll take more. But I think that needs to be a thing we do as a dev team, so that it's not something that then, when it cascades upwards, then you found that let's say the PM was waiting for a feature, but then it can't be done because as a dev team, because you might be one member, but if that one member doesn't deliver, it's the dev team that hasn't delivered. Mm-hmm. So the dev team, you need to cultivate amongst yourself a culture of saying, you said 1 hour, but from what you've described, you need more. So that among peers, you can challenge one another. So I would say that is a practical thing to do, start there. Yeah.
I think the best way to sort it out is to look at it from the process point of view. This way it ensures that, for example, if a dev is working on something, the specs needs to be very clear, right? Someone was looking to me earlier that sometimes business people can just slide in new features in there, and then the dev is wondering, what's going on? I finished this project, now I'm back to square one. So if the processes are there, and it's very clear that as a dev, I'm supposed to do A, B, C, D, right? So when it goes to the dev knows I can finish all this stuff within this period of time. If the spec changes within a particular period, then we come and see, do we do it as a new project? Do we pivot the project we currently have? What do we do about it? So I think processes are very good. Process in terms of requirement collection, processes in terms of code reviews, in terms of what you guys are talking about, CI and CD, right? In terms of how do you get libraries for this project. Making it very clear so that those processes ensure that good stuff gets to production. Another thing is to basically, as PMs and as the head engineers for your different companies, it is actually your responsibility to protect your engineers, because if you don't, they'll get misused by other teams, right? A business guy will come and say, I want this thing to be blue, right? But I want this thing upside down, right? So it means you should make sure that no changes comes from outside the team to your engineering team. That means if anyone wants to make a change to your system, anyone wants to modify A, B, C, D, it needs to go through a channel. So this channel can be the PM, or it can be someone that is basically responsible for that. That way, your engineers are protected from outside stuff. They can work more productively, and we can trust them more. Yeah.
Thank you. I want Bobby to trust that I finished this in 1 hour, so thank you for participating in this panel.
Okay.